The Galactic Peace Summit had always been a symbol of unity, or at least the illusion of it. Held in the crystalline halls of Elysium Station, representatives from every known species gathered beneath its opulent arches. But for the Deathworlders, the summit was nothing more than a performance. They were a species born of adversity, hailing from planets so hostile that survival was their birthright. For centuries, they had sought peace, believing cooperation was the key to progress. Yet time and time again, their trust had been betrayed. The ambassador for the Deathworlders, Rylus Kale, stood at the edge of the chamber, her imposing figure cloaked in the stark black and silver uniform of her people. Her piercing amber eyes scanned the room, noting the subtle sneers and dismissive glances of the other delegates. Despite her calm exterior, her mind churned with the weight of recent events. Less than a month ago, the colony on Vareth, for a lush, thriving Deathworld settlement, had been reduced to ash. An unprovoked orbital strike had obliterated its cities, killing millions. The perpetrators, a coalition of 5 species, claimed it was a necessary measure to secure resources. The Galactic Council had issued a weak condemnation, but took no real action. Justice was nowhere to be found. Rylus clenched her fists, her voice steady but sharp as she addressed the assembly. We have sought peace. We have endured insults, theft, and murder, all in the name of diplomacy. But our patience has its limits. The annihilation of Vareth was not an act of war. It was an act of cowardice. The chamber erupted in murmurs. Delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats, some feigning outrage, others whispering excuses. One delegate, a serpentine being from the Carrion Dominion, hissed mockingly. Perhaps if Deathworlders were less aggressive, these tragedies could be avoided. Rylus's gaze locked onto the Carrion delegate, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade. Aggressive? We have shown restraint beyond reason. No more. The murmurs died down as her words sank in. For centuries, Deathworlders had been a paradox, unrivaled in strength and ingenuity, yet endlessly patient. They had built marvels of technology, pioneered medical advancements, and shared their discoveries freely. But the galaxy had taken advantage of their generosity. Other species saw them as tools to exploit, threats to suppress. The final straw had been the images broadcast from Vareth for charred landscapes, skeletal remains, and the haunting silence of a once vibrant world. Among the dead were Rylus's sister and her 2 children. The weight of that loss bore down on her now, fueling her resolve. As the session adjourned, Rylus retreated to her private quarters, where a council of Deathworlder leaders awaited her via hologram. Their faces mirrored her determination. It's time, said Commander Yarrick Voss, his grizzled visage etched with years of battle scars. The galaxy has mistaken our mercy for weakness. We cannot allow this to continue. We've prepared contingency plans, added Selana Oren, a scientist whose brilliance had saved countless lives. Our technology can neutralize their fleets within weeks. Rylus nodded, her voice firm. No more mercy. No more games. If they want us to be monsters, we'll show them what that truly means. But we'll do it on our terms, strategic, precise, and unforgiving. The decision was unanimous. Across Deathworlder space, preparations began. Factories shifted from civilian production to military, alliances with other oppressed species solidified, and fleets mobilized. The message was clear. The Deathworlders had snapped. As Rylus gazed out at the endless expanse of stars, she whispered a vow under her breath. For Vareth, for all the ones we've lost. They'll learn what it means to provoke us. The storm had begun to gather, and the galaxy would never be the same. The silence before the assault was deafening. Rylus Kale stood on the command deck of the Vanguard, the flagship of the newly unified Deathworlder fleet. Around her, the hum of activity filled the air as officers coordinated final preparations. The faint blue glow of tactical displays reflected on their determined faces. This was no ordinary fleet. It was a coalition of the strongest, most resilient species born from the harshest worlds in the galaxy. Their ships were not crafted for aesthetics, but for efficiency. Their weapons designed with one goal: decisive annihilation of their enemies. Admiral Kale, a young officer, reported, his voice steady despite the tension. "All fleets are in position. We're awaiting your command." She took a deep breath, her gaze locked on the swirling mass of stars beyond the viewport. This was not an act of vengeance born from rage, but a calculated response. Vareth IV's destruction had unified the Deathworlders like never before. They had warned the galaxy countless times. Now they would act. "Begin the operation," Rylus ordered. The first target was the Carrion Dominion. Their military installations orbiting the resource-rich planet of Zarenth were crucial to their power. The Dominion had spearheaded the attack on Vareth IV, and now they would be the first to feel the Deathworlders' wrath. The Vanguard emerged from hyperspace alongside a fleet of sleek, angular warships. The Carrions had expected retaliation, but not this soon, and not on this scale. Within moments, Deathworlder vessels deployed precision EMP strikes, rendering the orbital defense platforms useless. Fighters swarmed, systematically dismantling remaining resistance. On the surface, Carrion leaders scrambled to respond. They had underestimated the Deathworlders, assuming their reputation for restraint would hold. Now, that restraint was gone. "Report," Rylus demanded, her voice cutting through the controlled chaos of the bridge. "Enemy defenses are neutralized," came the reply. "Ground forces report minimal resistance. The Dominion's High Council has been captured." Rylus nodded. "Good. No unnecessary casualties. Send the message." Moments later, every major communication network in the galaxy broadcast an unmistakable signal. The image of Rylus Kale standing tall, her voice resolute. "To the species of the galaxy, we have been patient. We have endured your betrayals, your theft, and your violence. That ends today. We will no longer tolerate your atrocities. The Deathworlders are not your prey, nor your tools. We are your equals, or if you continue to test us, your end. Consider this your only warning. Cross us again, and there will be no mercy." The broadcast ended abruptly, leaving an uneasy silence across countless worlds. The message was clear, and its delivery left no room for misinterpretation. Rylus turned to her second-in-command, Commander Yarrick Voss, who had watched the battle unfold beside her. "Phase 1 is complete," she said. "We move to secure the oppressed systems next. The galaxy must understand this isn't just about revenge. It's about balance." Jarrick's expression was grim. "They won't surrender so easily. Many will fight back, and others will use this chaos to their advantage." Rylus met his gaze, her voice unwavering. "Then they'll learn, as the Carrions did, that we're prepared for anything. We've given them every chance to change. Now we'll reshape this galaxy ourselves." The command deck buzzed with quiet efficiency as the Deathworlder fleet prepared for its next target. Across the galaxy, oppressed species watched the broadcast with renewed hope, while the oppressors scrambled to protect their empires. The Deathworlders had unleashed their fury, but this was only the beginning. Rylus knew the road ahead would be long and treacherous, but she welcomed it. For every step forward, for every battle fought, the memory of Vareth burned in her heart. The galaxy had taken from them again and again. Now, they would take it back on their terms. The battlefield over Zarenth was quiet now, the once proud Carrion fleet reduced to lifeless debris orbiting the scorched surface. Victory had been swift and devastating, but Rylus Kale stood on the command deck of the Vanguard with little satisfaction. For every enemy stronghold reduced to ash, she felt the weight of lives lost, both Deathworlder and otherwise. Reports flooded in from the other fleets. Across the galaxy, Deathworlder forces struck with precision, dismantling key military and economic hubs of their oppressors. The attacks were not random. They were surgical, designed to cripple the power structures that had exploited them for centuries. The message was clear. Retribution had arrived. Yet, as Ryla studied the hollow map before her, she knew the real battle had only just begun. The galaxy's balance of power had shifted, but it had not yet stabilized. For every oppressor that fell, there was a chance another might rise. Admiral Kale, Yarrick Voss said, stepping beside her. His face was grim, his scarred hands clasped behind his back. The Carrion Dominion has formally surrendered. Their leaders have offered unconditional terms, requesting mercy for their civilians. Mercy, Rylas echoed, the word bitter on her tongue. She remembered the pleas from Vareth for unanswered as the orbital strikes rained down. They didn't show us mercy, Yarrick. No, they didn't, Yarrick agreed. But we're not them. Rylas closed her eyes for a moment, letting his words settle. It would be easy to destroy the Carrions entirely, to let their planets burn as her people had burned. But the Deathworlders had not fought for vengeance alone. Their goal was justice, not annihilation. Secure their leaders and dismantle their fleets, Rylas ordered. But ensure their civilians are unharmed. We are not conquerors. Yarrick nodded, relief flickering across his face. He had always trusted Rylas to lead with honor, even in the face of unimaginable loss. As the fleet moved to secure Zarenth, Rylas turned her attention to the larger picture. Across the galaxy, oppressed species had begun to rise. Inspired by the Deathworlders' stand, they seized the opportunity to overthrow their own oppressors. It was both a victory and a risk. Chaos was spreading, and if left unchecked, it could consume them all. We need a council, she said aloud, her voice firm with conviction. Yarrick raised an eyebrow. A council? A new order, Rylas explained, gesturing to the holomap. One that ensures equality for all species, not just those who hold the most power. We can't fight every battle for them, Yarrick, but we can lead them to something better. He studied her for a moment, then nodded. And if they resist, then we'll remind them why they fear us, Rylas replied, her tone cold but resolute. But we'll offer them a choice first. That's more than they ever gave us. The Deathworlders began to lay the foundation for this new order. Messages were sent across the galaxy, inviting oppressed species to join in drafting the framework for a fair and just council. At the same time, their fleets continued to dismantle the remnants of the old powers, ensuring no empire could rise to threaten them again. As reports of progress poured in, Rylas allowed herself a moment of reflection. She stood alone in her quarters, staring out at the endless expanse of stars. Somewhere among them lay Vareth, for its ruins a stark reminder of the price of peace. We've done what we had to, she murmured. But it's only the beginning. The galaxy would rebuild, but it would never forget the day the Deathworlders finally snapped. Where once they had been seen as prey, they were now leaders and protectors. The storm they had unleashed had reshaped the stars, and though the cost had been great, they had ensured one thing. The galaxy would never underestimate them again.